Oh, hello. It's great to be back in Bradenton. We've got a number of folks with us here today, including our Chief Financial Officer, Blaise Ngolia. We have City of Bradenton Mayor Gene Brown, Vice Mayor Jane Kocher, Representative Yvette Benaroche, Senator Joe Gruters, Manatee Sheriff Rick Wells, County Commissioner Amanda Ballard, and I know we've got a lot of other folks, and so I want to thank you all for being here. We're going to sign two pieces of legislation which involve protecting taxpayers, particularly against local government taxes, property taxes and others, and also ensuring transparency in the spending process. Now, this has been an issue that I've discussed from time to time. I know Blaise Ngolia does it more than just time to time as part of his duties and doing it, but I think any time, look, we look at, how can we be helpful to the people that we represent, and when you have the kind of COVID era that's really continued, inflation wave, where things have gotten more expensive, particularly things like groceries, all these other things, where can we, at the state level, make the most impact? Where is government impinging on the American dream for people the most? And the state of Florida, at the state level, we have the lowest, or certainly among the lowest, tax burdens anywhere in the country. That's just a fact. No income tax. We've eliminated some taxes since I've been here. It just is what it is. A lot of our burden is shared by non-Florida residents, people that snowbird here, tourists, all these other things. So that's good. But what I think people have been struggling with is the costs associated with homeownership, particularly with property taxes. Now, we've also done a lot of stuff to address the Florida's insurance market, and they just came out. Citizens got reinsurance 30% lower than last year. Before, with the reforms, that reinsurance was going up tremendously. That's going to impact, what consumers are charged. And Citizens Insurance actually did the biggest reduction in rates in the history of the program for this year. Likely we'll have to do more reduction going forward. And we have now like 20 companies in offering, and USAA on auto insurance just announced a $1 billion rebate. And so, look, it's a difficult issue, but the reforms have pushed in a direction that we're seeing, and it's been pretty consistent. Some people say, they didn't reduce mine, and then they go shop, and then they find they can get better. So, yeah, they may try to renew you at the same, and that's why you shop. Likely you're going to be able to save. Certainly on the auto, we've seen that very, very significant. So we've done a lot. There's a lot of heavy lifting in the legislature, but at the end of the day, it is a private market. It's not something there's things that go into it that the government just can't control. Certainly when inflation goes up, it's going to be more expensive. There's a whole host of things. We couldn't help that we had 6 major hurricanes in 7 years. That's just a fact. That makes things more challenging. Taxes, though, is just purely a government function. It's not driven, by the private sector. It's not driven by circumstances. It's like, the people you elect, are they taxing you? Our state constitution, what does it allow? How much protection do you get? These are decisions we, the people, are able to make. And so we have looked to see, as from 2019 till the present, local government property tax revenue has basically doubled. It was a little over $30 billion in 2019, and now it's about $60 billion. Maybe not uniform throughout the state, but everywhere has gone up pretty dramatically. That's just a fact. And the question is okay, has that been necessary, or should the taxpayers have been benefiting along the way? And so in the process, there's different things that are done with highlighting local spending. I mean, look, there's some instances that are really inexplicable, and that's really with everything. I mean, for example, the school district of Broward County down in southeast Florida, their budget was, I think 8 years ago, $2.5 billion. They've lost 50,000 students since then, and their budget is now $5 billion. Now, where is that money? That is funding the system for the system's sake. That is not doing things to benefit the students. And so you see different examples that Blaise has found over the year. And so all that being said, that's something that can be meaningful for people. to do. And I'll go into kind of my view on the whole property tax thing, and I think where we need to go from here, and kind of the legislature. What they did was good, but I think that we need to do more. But people say, well, what do you get up there, you guys in Tallahassee, you want to tell people, what to do, a local government, all this. Well, listen, I think in some respects, in a vacuum, that's a valid concern. But I can tell you this, I have the budget for next fiscal year, which starts July 1st, on my desk. I'm going through, approving, vetoing some stuff, whatever. That will be done within the next week. And that, when I finish all that, it will represent the 4th straight year where the state of Florida has reduced the amount it's spending at the state level. Well, let me say that again. The budget 4 years ago was more than the budget 3 years ago. The budget 3 years ago was more than the budget 2 years ago, and the budget in current year is less than the budget, or I guess last year's budget that we signed is going to be this year's budget is going to be less than that, and so it can be done, and that's with population growth, that's with inflation. And some of the things, we had to put in more money for some of these projects too. Don't act like that we were immune for that. So you've had all those, and that's not even adjusting for inflation. When I say the budget's lower today, next fiscal year will be lower than current fiscal year, current less than last less than the year before that. That's nominal dollars. That's not inflation adjusted dollars. Obviously, inflation adjusted would be dramatically less. Population adjusted would be dramatically less. So we've done that and have had a very, very stable budget for the last 4 years. And some of that was, the legislature, I think, making some thoughtful choices. Some of it, quite frankly, was me having to exercise the line item veto power. But that's just the way. And look at what's happened with the state's debt. If you take all the state's debt in the history of the state of Florida from statehood till the present, just since I've been governor, we've paid off 51% of the state's debt. Paid it down. It's done. And we now have the lowest per capita debt of any state in the country. Meanwhile, we've done some really big things. We've done the largest environmental restoration in the history of the United States of America with the Florida Everglades. And I now, because, Biden was terrible on this, we now, under the Trump administration, have been delegated authority to do some of the federal share of the projects, and they're funding that, and we do it a lot quicker. That's just the way we roll. So we're doing that. And that's something that's been, but we've put billions and billions of dollars into that. It's gotten to the point we've done the infrastructure, we've improved the water flow that, next year, 3 years from now, you're going to spend less on that than what I've had to do because we had to really get where we were going. So that's been major. We've done infrastructure. We flushed another $7 to $8 billion into moving Florida forward. You've got these projects that were in the queue to start 10 years from now when traffic is bad now, and we've accelerated. You see, some of you actually in Manatee may experience I-4 going into Orlando. I know the people that live in like Polk and Hillsborough and some of those. Just the temporary lane we did very quickly there has been a huge cut in traffic time there. Once the whole thing is done, you're going to save, and that's actually meaningful for people's lives. So we've never had an investment so dramatic in the history of the state. We did that. Education. We've continued to have, and look, I'm not one that says, if you spend more, you're going to get better results, because some of the worst schools in the country have like $40,000 per student, like Washington, D.C., and some of these other ones. So it's not just about that. But even as we've done universal school choice, the amount of money that's gone to school districts has increased, and we've created, under my tenure, a special provision of the budget where money that's sent to school districts can only be used for teacher salary increases. The budget I'm going to sign soon has, I think it's like a $1.55 billion, which is more than has ever been done, but $200 million of that is targeting people that have 10 years or more experience, because we did a lot to try to get the minimum up, because people didn't want to be teachers. They had other opportunities. So we're trying to make that more attractive for college graduates. But regardless, that's a massive investment. So we're doing big things, but doing it within the context of a budget that's actually declining. And so when we're sitting here talking about standing up for taxpayers at the local level, making sure spending is transparent, making sure spending's not runaway, making sure people aren't being taxed the way they have been, we have credibility in doing that because our budget has been very, very stable, very, very modest. You know, it's interesting. You see this stuff in New York City, you know, just electing people that even 5 years ago, I think, would have been thought that would have been impossible to do. People that are celebrating terrorism, people that really reject the foundations of this country, which, you know, we're now celebrating 250. And yeah, I think it's a really, really, you know, dangerous trend over there in that party. But the reality is you know, look at how they're governed. The state of New York has 4 million fewer residents than the state of Florida. Our budget's about $117 billion. Their budget's $268 billion. Where is that money going? So these are choices that we have to make as citizens and who we elect and what we expect. But we've done it right at the state level, and the budget that I'll sign very soon will continue that trend. And that's something that we're very, very proud of. Now, we did launch for not just local government, but also state government, this FAFO audits, the Florida Agency for Fiscal Oversight, identifying things. And there have been things that have been identified at the state level that have been flagged, and reforms. Sometimes that's easier to do because you can just change your processes if you have an agency or something, but also at the local level looking at different things. And I know they did Manatee County, Blaze did that, and our folks at the state level did that, and they found that Manatee County in some ways, you know, had some good marks compared to the rest of the state. County held general fund spending growth below the increase in ad valorem revenues, cut the millage rate multiple times, and embraced the form of zero-based budgeting for operating budget. I think that's really important. Basically, that's legislative speak for you don't guarantee last year's level of spending plus inflation as the starting point. What you do is you go in and say, okay, what do we need to spend on? You should assume zero for certain things, and there should be justification why that should be funded again. I mean, that just goes without saying. In Washington, what they do, they don't do zero-based budgeting. So if you have a failed program that gets hundreds of billions of dollars or millions of dollars, whatever, you go the next year, they assume that same amount plus like 8%. So if you even want to say, okay, we'll do it, but only increase 3%, they say that's a draconian cut. It's actually a 3% increase of the previous year, but they'll frame that as a draconian. So it's hardwired to always increase spending in Washington and always grow government. When you do zero-based budgeting, you kind of you diffuse that hardwire, and the default should be zero, and then justify why you're using taxpayer money to do those different things. So there were signs, though, in terms of affordability for Manatee taxpayers. Blaze found that Manatee County's overall budget had grown faster than the rate of inflation and population growth, even despite the millage cuts. Doge team found Manatee County carried out capital projects with limited planning and based on questionable assumptions. The number of staff funded, grew pretty dramatically, 25% increase. And then since then, Manatee staff have worked with the Doge teams to help identify opportunities to save money for taxpayers. And there was a number of things that were identified to be able to do that. So, look, I think that's great that Manatee has done that. There's some jurisdictions that they don't want to ever listen or do any of the stuff like that. You hear different things like City of St. Pete, $307,000 on consulting services, develop a sustainability action plan for a Green New Deal like priority. Counties across southeast Florida created a climate compact designed to force reductions of carbon emissions from residents, even though we've reduced emissions through market forces in Florida pretty dramatically. So you see, like, why are your taxes funding some of those things? Those are more ideological joyrides that these local governments are going on. And I'm just saying, if affordability is something we want to address, put the money back in the pocket of the property taxpayer, the homeowner. That's where you can really do a lot of difference. So we've been able to do a lot of these different things. And so, I just looked at the numbers and I said, okay, for whatever reason, Florida Constitution has always treated the homestead residents preferable to other forms of property. So you have residential that are not homestead, and then you have commercial properties. The homestead property, once you do that and establish that, it limits the amount they can increase your valuations. They cap that at most at 3%. And that does help for sure. Now, depending on where the market is, if you have to buy a new home, you could get a reset tax basis. Some of that carries over, but oftentimes not enough to make up for the whole difference of the home. But nevertheless, that's been something that's been good. And if you look at all the revenue that local governments take in across the state, there's more residential tax revenue that comes in from non-homestead properties than from homestead properties, and obviously you have commercial that contributes to it. So our insight was basically, you have this homestead exemption that goes up a certain amount. Why not exempt it all and let people actually own their home so that they're not constantly being taxed and having to pay the piper for all these other things. People say, oh, how are you going to get services? Like, you're paying a lot of other taxes just around. There's a lot of taxes that people pay. So it isn't like they're not going to be doing it, but I also think it would be better for the economy because people would have more money in their pocket, and it would definitely be a huge reason for people to be homesteaded in Florida. So that was and we said, look, it may not happen immediately. It may have to phase it. Although I think if you did it immediately, it would still be more revenue than local governments got adjusted for population and inflation than they had in 2019. And so we did have all these services in 2019. Let's just be very clear about that. So I thought even if you did that, it would be fine. But if you raise it and continue to raise it, limit local spending so that as revenue comes up, they're not able to just spend it, it goes back, and people get more of an exemption, and eventually you have that. It's interesting because, they're talking about this bill in Washington on housing, and then President Trump, I think, just threw cold water on it. I don't know what that means going forward. But one of the issues they were supposedly addressing are these large companies like private equity buying up neighborhoods and then renting them out. And so they were talking about banning it. The bill doesn't actually ban it. It just has those institutional people go through a couple extra steps. So I'm not sure anyone's really going to be happy with that on either side. But we looked at it from the tax perspective in Florida. Well, guess what? If you have homestead tax-free and some of these companies want to buy, 20 homes in a neighborhood, they're going to pay tax on that. You are not as the primary homeowner. So if we want to make homes more affordable for individual homeowners and not just make them end up being this, well, having that real strong homestead, that would help get you there because it would be much better to do that than to do the other. Be that as it may, that was what we were really working for. And we also proposed, so yes, you do that. Yes, you have to have a process where people can't just move here and claim this immediately. That they would have to have some skin in the game for a period of time, just like you have to establish residency for in-state tuition. Can be the same thing, and so we thought that was important. And then I also thought, look, I think that a lot of these folks, these local governments have adequate resources, but we've got this massive surplus. We now have quadrupled the rainy day fund since I took office in 2019. We're going to end up, I'm going to veto some more stuff, so we're going to end up with really strong reserves. I mean, historically, the last 6 or 7 years in Florida has been without really peer in the modern history of the state. Why not take some of that, establish a fund, and then give local governments who really need money for services grants? I'm not giving you a grant to increase bloat. I'm not giving you a grant to do your ideology. But if there was a city that said, listen, we're going to have to lay off these 2 police officers because of this, how the property tax work, I would give a grant for that. You have others, you give a grant, that's fine. And that wouldn't be forever, but it would be in this transition period. And that would really be historic, and I think it would be something to do. So we worked on that, and we proposed. We had worked with primarily the Senate. It's just the reality of kind of how we had to deal with the legislature the last couple of years. Didn't have support in the House leadership to do very much that we wanted to do, so we had to figure out ways to get it done, and stopped a lot of the stuff they wanted to do, which would have been really bad. But we did. Ultimately, the House was not going to pass the homestead elimination proposal, put it on the ballot. I think it would have passed. I think it would have been huge. Biggest victory for taxpayers in the history of the state, probably since they banned the income tax in the state constitution. So be that as it may, they ended up passing a big property tax cut. I'm in favor of it. I think it'll be very good for taxpayers. Honestly, it's a modest reduction in kind of the revenue. I mean, they're still way more than they were in 2019 local governments relative to inflation and population growth. Don't let anyone tell you differently on that. If you couldn't function in 2019 levels of spending, if you could function in 2019, you're going to be able to function if this passes going forward. There is no question about it. And so I applaud that the legislature was willing to put something on the ballot. I haven't run all the numbers on that. We had all the numbers for our proposal. We were going to roll out everything, but I think it's going to be good. It'll be meaningful, particularly for people that are, more working class and middle class homeowners, and they're going to see a pretty big cut in what they're doing on property tax. And I know Blaze, can tell you how some of those numbers work in terms of what he's seen with the overspending. So if you literally just put the budgets back at like 2024 level and just froze them there and not let them grow more than population or inflation, you'd have huge amounts of money to be able to return to our homeowners. There's no question about it. So it can be done. So they're doing that, and that's going to be on the ballot in November. And I know there's a lot of discussion about it. Like, all I'll tell you is when I hear these people, it's like, do you care about affordability or not? If you care about it, then what better tool in the toolbox do we have than to do this for our homesteaded property owners? I mean, that's the best thing we can do. It obviously overwhelmingly benefits middle-class people. And not that, I want everyone to get it, but this is definitely something that's targeted there, and that it's going to be a meaningful thing. And it's like some people just believe that government has first dibs on your property and your income. And it's like, okay, you exist to satisfy government, and then you get the crumbs that are left over. I think it's the other way around. I think you work hard, you save, you invest, you acquire property because you're doing what our founding fathers established this country to do. You're pursuing happiness. You're realizing your ambitions, and in part of that, if there's taxes to support government that will help you do that, then that's one thing. Even though we don't like paying, we understand there's a small need for it. But ultimately, government is supposed to exist to be able to ensure that dream is alive, that you're able to do what you want. And I just think some people just have it totally backwards. It should be, what do our citizens need? Then you can talk about government's needs. And instead, it's all about what government needs or wants, not even needs, what they want, and that you're just supposed to be happy with crumbs on the table. And that's not the way the country was founded, and that's not consistent, I think, with the ethos here in the free state of Florida. So we have a chance to do something about it. I view the initiative as kind of an opening salvo. I don't think that this is the end of property tax. I think that we have an opportunity as a state that attracts a lot of visitors, a lot of people that pay taxes here who are not residents here in a variety of ways. We can leverage that for the benefit of our own citizens and the primary homeowners that homestead their property. And so that debate will continue. But the people are ahead of the elites on this, right? Some elites, they're just so used to Well, of course your home is government can take your home if you stop paying, auction the house, all this stuff. Like, of course. Like, no, not of course. Why? Why would we want to allow that to happen in a free society? And so I think that you're going to continue to see a lot of the politicians are going to have to catch up to where the people are going, because the people want and they need relief, and they want to be able to own their own home. So the bills we're signing today kind of plays into that whole debate about proper levels of spending, support for taxpayers. And so there's two bills that we're signing. The first one was passed in the property tax special session. It's Senate Bill 4F. It makes it harder for local governments to raise property tax burdens without greater accountability. So under current law, local governments can benefit from complicated formulas that allow them to take in more money from taxpayers, even when they are not technically raising tax rates. This bill cuts through that concern by strengthening safeguards against local property tax increases. It changes how local governments calculate the maximum property tax rate they can adopt with a simple majority vote. Under the current system, local governments can increase rates based on growth in Florida's per capita personal income. This bill removes that adjustment and generally limits the maximum possible millage rate increase year over year to the standard rollback rate. The rollback rate is designed to bring in roughly the same amount of property tax revenue as the year before, meaning local governments won't necessarily be able to increase revenue as quickly as home values rise. And let's just be clear, these home values are totally subjective. You know, they say you bought a house for $350,000 6 years ago, and then they tell you 2 years ago, oh, by the way, it's worth $800,000. Well, you never sold the house for $800,000, and so until there's actually a market transaction, and this stuff goes up and down. So this is something that will be protecting taxpayers. Under the bill, if a local government wants to go above the rolled back level, it would have to meet a higher threshold within the local governing body. And so having supermajority requirements, 2/3 vote, is something that's really, really positive for taxpayers. The change is expected to lower the base millage rate for many local governments because the new calculation no longer factors in personal income growth. Many jurisdictions will have less ability to increase property tax collections through the normal budgeting process. And, you know, that's part of the thing with property tax when they say, oh, you know, this property tax. A lot of it is kind of silent stealth tax increases because they're not actually raising your rate. Just all of a sudden you have to pay more, right? And there's not even like really a public vote on it to the extent that you would expect. So this is good. This supports the ballot initiative that's on the ballot. And provides the ability to have that clearly explained. So I look forward to signing that momentarily. Second bill I'm signing today is Blaze's bill, HB 1329, Local Government Financial Transparency and Accountability Act. It requires local governments to put more of their financial information online in a format that taxpayers can more readily access for review. This includes budget summaries, revenues, expenditures, spending by department and function, staffing summaries, reserves, fund balances, and other important financial information. The bill also requires counties and municipalities to publish quarterly reports concerning employee compensation and an annual budget development calendar promoting year-round accountability for local governments. More importantly, this bill requires local governments to conduct a budget-cutting exercise before final adoption. I know Blaze will talk a little bit about that. So I want to thank the folks in the legislature for passing these two bills. These bills are taxpayer-friendly, and we've got to be taxpayer-friendly as office holders, but particularly as Republicans, and these bills meet that mark. So we're going to hear from Blaze and then the mayor, and then I'll make it official. So Blaze, you want to come up?
Thank you, Governor. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Blaze Ngoli, the Chief Financial Officer of this great state. First, I want to thank the Governor for being such a staunch defender of the taxpayers here in this state. This was a conversation that we have had about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and I told the Governor, remember where we were. I said, hey, watch what's going on with property taxes, because I guarantee you these locals are going to continue to take this extra revenue and expand government. And that's exactly what they have done and why we are here today going through these fights on the side of the taxpayers against big government. As your Chief Financial Officer, I've made it a priority to look out for the taxpayers of the state with real and honest transparency, showing people, voters, and taxpayers exactly where their money is going and how large their government is growing. And the bills that we're signing here is just one in a long line of efforts that I'm going to be involved in over the next 8 years, making sure that we keep government smaller, more accountable, and cost less. So with the legislation today, Floridians will have more transparency into how their local governments are spending their money and in a more accessible format. So House Bill 1329, which was carried by Representative Benaroche, I want to thank you. And while we're here, Senator, I want to thank you for everything that you have done. And Sheriff in the back, thank you for everything that you're doing here, keeping the people of Manatee County safe. The ability to see where your taxpayers are going is an important exercise for taxpayers and for government. And I will tell you that it is long overdue that we've had more transparency and accountability for these. For some of you that have been following what we are doing over the last several months, we have been touring the state and sharing the results of our FAFO, Florida Agency for Fiscal Oversight, reviews and audits. These spending reviews are a very simple yet profound exercise, spending audits that identify just how much excessive and wasteful spending your government is doing with your tax dollars. And let me tell you, the numbers that we are seeing are absolutely staggering. Just last week alone, my office announced that we have identified $165 million in excessive, wasteful, and needless spending in Osceola County and $443 million excessive and wasteful spending in Palm Beach County for just last year's budget cycle alone. Earlier this month, my office identified over $807 million in wasteful spending in Miami-Dade County over the last few years, over the last 3 years, and that's approaching $1 billion wasted in just 3 years alone. Now, for those wondering what the grand total of excessive and wasteful spending that we have identified so far, $3.8 billion. That is money that should be in the hands of the taxpayers, not in the hands of government. And we do this by indexing, and the governor had referred to it, inflation and population. This is an important metric that the big government apologists and the Sunday editorial writers just want to be totally dismissive of. But this is an important metric to show just how large government is growing, because if government grows faster than inflation and population, it will outstrip the ability of the taxpayers to pay for it. That's when you get to the point of a large oppressive government who takes more from you, and then to the governor, what he said is that you wind up working for the government, not yourself. In fact, I know this for a fact that the governor and I had both retweeted a tweet from Stephen Moore, renowned economist, and it's not just Florida, it's other states also. And the metric that they were using was inflation and population. A lot of these local governments are growing faster than the ability of the taxpayers to pay for it. Now, unfortunately, those numbers are just going to continue to grow if there is not an intervention, a spending intervention. And that intervention comes in the form of a couple of places. Number one, state government, where we are signing one of the bills today to hopefully clamp down on the amount of growth that's happening in our local governments, but also the taxpayers. The taxpayers are the ultimate intervention, and that's why a constitutional amendment on the ballot is so very important, because government is never going to right-size itself. It's going to have to come from the taxpayers. So this bill that we're signing here today, and Governor, thank you for signing this bill, House Bill 1329, will give every single Florida taxpayer the ability to see for themselves exactly where their tax dollars are going. This is this bill clears the fog and strips away the ambiguity. Ambiguity. It was easy for him to say. That has cloaked local government's excessive and wasteful spending that has been occurring over the past few years. The bill will require all counties and municipalities to put their budgets online in an easily accessible and format, so taxpayers can see how much their local government has grown. So This came out because we're doing our audits. There were a lot of governments where they would have last year's budget online or the last 2 years' budget online, and we want to compare how large it's grown over the last 5 years. So a lot of this information, year 3, year 4, year 5, wasn't there. And it was very tough for us to go call the administration and say, hey, we need these documents in order to do these calculations. If it was hard for us to get, it's going to be impossible for local people to get. Now, I know what happens. You guys will put in a public records request, and it will take weeks, and it will take months, and all of a sudden they want to charge you $600. No, this is the taxpayers. Taxpayers are paying for this. This information should be readily accessible. Additionally, counties will have to publish employee salary information, just like how the state is required to publish all salary information in a searchable format, more transparency. And importantly, the bill requires that counties and municipalities take a long look in the mirror at how they go through their own budgets during budget time and publicly identify up to 10% of cuts. This is, the governor alluded to this also, like what they do is they start off with their base budget and then they increase it and then they justify their increase. And if you ever do want to cut, it's not a real cut, it's just a cut in the amount that they wanted to spend, and then they complain that you're actually cutting the budget. So it is built in, like the governor said, where government budgets are going to continue to increase year after year after year. We need government at all levels to start thinking about spending cuts. So what this bill does is it forces local governments to go out and identify up to 10% cuts every year. Doesn't mean that they're going to make the cut, but they should have conversations that say, hey, if our budget is $1 billion, we need to identify to the taxpayers how we would cut 100 million, 10% of their budget in the event that we would have to. And you will be surprised what that exercise does. That exercise will expose a couple of things, that there's probably a lot of money that they didn't need in the first place, and most taxpayers would agree with that. Yeah, I think we need to get rid of this. But it will also call out a lot of the local spenders who will use the exercise of trying to cut fire and cut police, saying that, hey, if we have to cut 100 million, that we're going to lose a certain amount of sheriff's deputies, right? But then you see that they're still keeping, middle management that are all making an average of $300,000 or $400,000 a year that you don't need. We need people to take care of us and protect us, because the first role of government is to protect its citizens, not to fund middle managers who are making 2 or 3 times, 4 times, 5 times what the average person makes in the county. I have full confidence that these important changes in this bill, along with our Florida Agency for Fiscal Oversight audits, will demonstrate that property tax reform is not only possible, but absolutely necessary. I want to thank the governor again for his continued commitment to putting the taxpayers first and government second, because that's what the founders wanted. Governor, I appreciate your leadership.
Thank you. And I'd just like to thank the governor and our CFO, obviously, for everything they've done over the last several years, and look forward to working with the CFO over the next several years as we go forward. City of Bradenton, and one of the things that we're proud of is we have actually been doing a lot of this before you even started doing it. And that was one of the things. I became mayor in 2021 and bring a business-like accountability to government. Because in a business, and in our family, and my son's out there, and some of our family and brother and that, we own a small family funeral home. My mom and dad started it in 1975 on a shoestring, basically, with 4 young kids, 8, 6, 4, and 2. I was the 8-year-old. My 2-year-old brother is out here today. And we looked at how things would work and how they would go. And starting a new business is really tough. But as now we're in our 51st year as a small family business, we still have the same talks that I want to have in government about what we've got to do to streamline things, what we've got to do for transparency. And that's what I brought to government 6 years ago in the mayor's position with a great council, really working hard. And so we're glad that the taxpayers will get to decide, and that's what you do when you're in government. You should let others that are actually affects the most decide. So one thing I do want to say, though, and I didn't really get to see after 2024 very much, but what this man did coming into our town when Bradenton and Manatee County was hit the worst from June through October with 3 major storms. And one of the things I was proud of to be able to stand up in our community and say was we had no deaths. In other communities, North Carolina still hasn't found some of the people that were in Lake Lure in that area. And just what this governor did coming in, walking our streets, not only in the city of Bradenton, but throughout Manatee County, was very heartfelt, and the citizens saw that. So we want to thank you, even though you won't be here anymore after this year.
You're not going to see me this summer because we're not going to have any
Hurricanes, right. We got there. No, but what you did coming through, the citizens saw, and we appreciate it, and working with us to get things done was greatly appreciated. And as we go forward, this is greatly appreciated to work through things. And again, we're running government in the city of Bradenton, business-like, make it happen, give the taxpayers their money back if we can, not even take it from them. And we're just thankful to be here and proud to be part of the great state of Florida. So thank you.
All right. Young man, come on. All right, we're going to do it. Whoever wants to be up for this. All right, so let's see. So we'll do this first. All right. Today is the 24th of June, am I right? Good, because I wrote it before I got confirmation. Here's the special session one. All right, there you go. Permanent marker, remember, okay? Two more. Anybody? Okay. Anyone? All right, now, you're not done yet. Hold that up. Next to me. All right, they're going to take a photo. Make sure they can see your face. Good? All right. Good work, man. Good job. Thank you. Good job, guys. Thanks, buddy. It's his birthday, 12 years old today.
Happy birthday!
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
No worries. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We appreciate what you do for us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yes. All right. Are we missing one of those? What? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, good. All right. So good work. This is good. We'll have the budget signed, obviously, by July 1st, so within the next week. We'll have done that. I've got some more bills that we'll be doing over the next week, and that will put a wrap on the regular and multiple special sessions of this winter and spring, but I think that this stuff's good for taxpayers. And look, we joke a little bit about not having hurricanes. Hopefully we don't. We didn't have last year. We're prepared. It's something we take very seriously. I think for this area in particular, it would be great to not have to deal with that because I know people have been through a lot. And they claim when you have drought conditions, the hurricane risk goes down in the hurricane season. And, that may be true, but when they are now predicting less likely than more likely, when they usually say it's going to be the worst ever, I kind of would rather them say it's going to be the worst ever. I feel like if they're saying it may not be, then it's probably going to be wrong. So in any event, we'll be ready for it. But, it's, we roll and we will get it done one way or another. So hopefully we get a good quiet hurricane season. All right, do we have any questions back there? Okay, yep.
Governor, when it comes to the governor's race, when it comes to the lack of a debate, is there enough time for any of the other candidates to catch up to the polling process?
You have to ask political people about that. I think you should have debates. I think that that's important. This is a difficult state to get known in, and to be able to be broadcast where people can kind of see these candidates, oftentimes for the first time, can be very valuable. Obviously, when I was running, that helped me a lot to be able to do. I've been critical of the state party, leadership because they do this summit
and they say we're going to do a debate, a governor debate. All right, so people like signed up thinking that they'd have this debate, and they said no candidate can do any other debate except our debate, and they said you can't do it. And then they say, oh well, only one guy can debate, so we're not going to have a debate. I mean, I think people feel that that's a bait and switch, and the party's job is not to try to engineer an outcome. Party's job is to, inform Republican voters and try to increase participation. I know when I was running in 18, this is just a fact. I mean, most of the people in the RPOF were not for me in the primary. I mean, that's just the reality. And so it is what it is. But I think that there should be. And here's the thing. If you don't ever have debates, then the only way to get known is basically the person that raises the most, money from special interests. And then you spend money to do it. And if you're not able to do that, then you don't even get known to begin with. And that's challenging. And I know when I ran in 18, I mean, I got outspent probably 3-1. And I think having certainly the June debate that we did was a huge thing to be able to inform people about, who I was, what my background was, all these other things. So I think there should be debates generally. I don't think the party has any right to control the debates, but I think how this was handled was not what you want. I mean, you've got to be on the up and up here, and if you say you're going to do debate, do a debate. If you're going to say other candidates can't do any other debate but our debate, well, you definitely got to do the debate, right? So it has not been, I think, done properly. And look, I mean, voters can make decisions about how they think of all that.
Governor, I want to get your thoughts on this proposal that the Board of Governors is addressing today that would make it more difficult for undocumented students to attend state colleges.
So when I became governor, we had in law in Florida that you could be here illegally and get in-state tuition. And I was like, that is crazy. Under my watch, that's been repealed in Florida, and that should have been repealed they should have never been instituted in the first place, to be honest with you. And so that was not easy victory. You think all these like any of them run, if they're running a primary, should you give in-state tuition discounts to someone here illegally? They will have to say no, otherwise they will lose the primary. But then somehow, when it gets time to do, there's all this behind-the-scenes resistance. So getting that across the finish line was not easy. It took a lot of effort, and we pushed on it for a long time, and we got it done. So that's good. I mean, think about it. What incentive is it to someone here illegally that they're able to get a discount on tuition the same as a Florida resident, but then that they're getting less than what a U.S. citizen in Georgia is getting? Someone who lives in South Georgia? It just doesn't make any sense at all. Now, I also think the reality is no state has done more to combat illegal immigration than Florida has, certainly since I've been governor. And we require all state and locals to participate. We've helped with the with the staging and the detention, so that help DHS when they didn't have space. We've done a lot, and we have way more productivity out of Florida as a result for that mission. But, Biden let in 10, 15 million people illegally. If you say we're just not going to do anything about it, then you're basically ceding the sovereignty of your country. So I thought this was something very important for the state to be doing. And so we're doing that. How is it, though, that we would be doing that and then somehow say, yeah, if you're here illegally, you go to a state university? It doesn't make sense. I would rather have that spot go to a Florida resident than somebody here is there. So they are going to be doing these checks, and they never had a policy that said you could be here illegally per se. They never asked the question at the universities, and so the assumption was that this would be the case. Well, now that we've addressed the tuition issue and aren't given the tuition breaks for someone here illegally, then this is the next step. So I'm fully supportive of it. I think what they're doing is the right thing to do, and I think it's putting the students in Florida who are growing up here, going to our schools, Florida residents, it's putting them first, and that's what we need. It's a lot more competitive to get into some of these schools. I mean, if you're a good student, you'll get into some state university for sure, but it used to be University of Florida, it was a good school, but it wasn't like it was ultra competitive, and now it's ultra competitive, and that's partially because the prestige of the university has gone up. There's been a lot of things that have been done to make it more academically competitive. It's been rated the #1 public university on some rankings. Others, it's usually in the top 4, 5, 6 schools publicly. One Wall Street Journal Manhattan Institute said Florida was #1 overall for all universities because they counted free speech, and they counted things where some of the legacy liberal institutions have really turned back on. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And, oh, by the way, New College. I get a kick out of, it's funny. It's like, there's some people that think that they had a right to just own New College and use New College to pursue their ideological agenda. Nobody voted for that. And in fact, they voted for the opposite, certainly in 22, when I won by so much. And so it's like, okay, we should have this be serving the best interests of the state's policies. We believe in education, not indoctrination. We believe in classical education, which incidentally, in an age of technological change, and you hear a lot about AI, I think classical education is going to be more important than ever, because that's kind of the building blocks of how to think critically, how you public character, all these different things that our founders believe are very important and I think are really timeless. But we do the stuff with New College, and what we said was, so Corcoran goes in, there's a lot of changes, and I get like some of the incumbents probably didn't like that because it's changing that. There were some students that didn't like it because, and in fairness to them, they signed up when it was more like a Marxist commune, and that's what they signed up for. They knew what they were getting. Well, we're changing that, and it's a little bit different. So some of them, I get that, but now they have a good path. But in the process of that, we work with the legislature, and the legislature provided a lot of funding because the campus had been neglected for a long time. So you've had big time amounts of funding to go in to make really significant improvements to the physical campus. And what some people do is they'll say, oh, New College got this much. There's so much more per student than all the other colleges. Oh, they must be worse. Those are not recurring expenses. So it's very dishonest when people say that because they're taking kind of these one-shot capital improvements, things that are making the campus better, and they're trying to say that somehow it's costing that much indefinitely to be able per student to do. That's not the case. They're not going to continue to be getting that after they make the improvements. But if you look at the USF campus that they're going to get, they're going to have a really, really significant contiguous footprint. I mean, this is going to be something that's going to be very beneficial for them from an infrastructure perspective. So anytime someone tries to say that somehow they're getting so much more per student, it's somehow inefficient, they're deliberately either ignoring or lying about the fact that this was kind of a moment in time where we made the decision, we're either going to fish or cut bait on this. It wasn't doing what I think the initial vision for it was to be our top honors college. And so the question was, do we just want to kind of let it wither, or do we really want to make it something special? And we decided to try to make it something special. And so you're doing that. And I think it's interesting because some of the flack that they take, to me, that just shows you're over the target. I mean, like if it really wasn't doing well, then no one would care about it, right? I mean, but the fact is it's representing a different pathway for higher education. And it's a way that a lot of people have responded to positively. That's why you see applications. That's why you've seen the enrollment has gone up because of the job that they've done. So I'm really I'm excited about that. We've got a lot of good stuff going on in the higher education system. But make no mistake, we got to put the Florida students first. And I don't want a Florida student to lose a spot, for this. And it's also the case. We have a requirement now. That the undergrad population across the system has to be 90% in state, which a lot of people, there's some people that try to act like, we have like half more. That's not true. So 90% has to be in state. Most of the other 10%. Now that's an average across the universities, and so one may be 92, one may be 88, but that's the average. But of the 10%, that's overwhelmingly U.S. citizens from the other 49 states. I mean, our foreign footprint is very, very small. I'm open to making it even smaller. I mean, I think they have to do. But the reality is Florida has very much in our policies focused on in-state students. That's the primary mission of the university. You don't want to shut off the rest of the 49 states, because if someone is a really good student and they want to come and choose University of Florida over Georgetown or over MIT, honestly, that's a good thing for a university to get somebody that's got high quality. So you can set the bar very high for those students in those other states. But even with that, you have 90% that are going to be in-state students, and I think that's appropriate. And oh, by the way, you want to talk about working for affordability. No tuition increase for the entire time I've been governor for undergrad for our in-state students. It's the same tuition as it was in 2019. I don't think there's any other state that can say that. And even if they can say that, ours is a lot lower than theirs anyways. And so we start out a lower baseline. And that's been very important, because people can go to these schools, they can work a part-time job and not have to take out any loans. Parents can afford, especially if you do Florida prepaid, and we've rebated a lot for prepaid because tuition's low. So you've done all of this in the most affordable way possible for higher education. And that doesn't even count our state colleges, which are also the most affordable in the United States of America. And that doesn't even count our K-12 school choice, which is universal, and parents are able to make these decisions for themselves going forward. And so I'm I'm proud. Blaze, I just want to final point. Blaze made there's a graph. I guess I didn't see that Blaze put it out, but I put it out on social media that shows this is nationwide graph where population kind of marginally increasing. Now Florida we've had a more steep, but marginally. Inflation significant. But then property tax revenue way more than population and inflation, not even close. So this is a phenomenon that is not limited to Florida. I think it's more acute in Florida because we had more of a population increase, and I think the way the housing market shook out, it caused the tax basis to go higher for more people. But the reality is, and another thing is with nationwide in the last 5 or 6 years, homeowners insurance, it's up like 79 to 80% nationwide. A lot of times people say it's a Florida thing, like everyone else has low. It's gone up everywhere. Now, we have more perils, and so if you buy a place, on the water there, that's probably going to be harder to insure than something that's just smack dab in the middle of Ohio or something. But I think people get that. But that's been an issue nationwide. So when homeowners are paying their monthly payment, you have principal and interest. That used to be the bulk of the payment, and then you'd have smaller amounts for insurance and property tax. Now, insurance and property tax exceeds the principal and interest. And so that's been an issue nationwide. We're really the only state that's doing a lot about the property tax. As of now, I know other states have talked about it, but I don't think there's any other initiative on the ballot that's even close to what we're doing in Florida. And as I've said many months and even years, with all the special sessions we did in 22 and 23 on trying to shore up the insurance market, our insurance market has stabilized more than people thought possible. They thought it was just going to go to smithereens. And when you're seeing reductions from Citizens even, which I don't think had ever done reductions, and now people are able to go, and look, it used when the reforms passed, people would say, oh, I still haven't seen anything. I would say, and look, it takes time for this stuff to reset. But, you do now talk to a lot of people that are saving on auto and home, whereas 5 years ago, that was like a pipe dream that you would ever save. And so there's more options out there, partially because the market's better and the legislative reforms. And so those two issues, I think, have been really, really significant nationwide. We've done a lot in Florida to tackle it. Obviously, the property tax is going to need the support of the voters in November, but people have an opportunity. And, I also get a kick out of some people say, like, oh, this is not going to be good for renters. First of all, the proposal that the legislature put on, it reduces the amount that businesses can be assessed. And so a business, you're going to rent from a business, right, who owns the apartment complex. Right now, they can increase assessment 10%. If this passes, that's capped at 5%. So they're not going to be able to jack up assessments. And so they say, oh, then they'll just pass it on to the renter. Well, this is more friendly for business properties than current law is. And that's just a fact. But then I also think to myself, like when I was in the Navy as a junior, as an ensign, and I rent an apartment, my life's ambition was not to be in that apartment. like, yeah, I'm a renter now, but I'm going to buy a home. And, you know, so you buy a home. Like my wife, when we got married, bought a home and did all this. And that's kind of the way things go. So when they say it's not good for a renter, a lot of those renters want to be homeowners. They just want to be able to afford it. And this initiative will help them do that. All right. Thanks, everybody.